Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
Michael was a man of logic. Every aspect of his life was guided by precise calculations, meticulous planning, and an unwavering sense of control. As an infrastructure technology specialist, he worked to make sure critical systems never failed. If a problem arose, he anticipated it. If something went wrong, he found the flaw and fixed it before it caused any major damage. Still, there was one area of his life he never felt the need to test or question: his marriage to Jessica. Jessica was the piece that balanced his methodical nature. Where Michael saw life as straight, predictable lines, Jessica saw curves and colors. She was spontaneous, lively, and full of little surprises. She had a habit of leaving sweet notes on the breakfast table, remembered special dates without needing digital reminders, and laughed at things Michael would never understand. That was part of the charm. He loved her energy, her ability to turn ordinary moments into pleasant memories. If his life was a high-precision system, Jessica was the unexpected variable that made everything more interesting. But love also lay in trust. And trust was something Michael never had a reason to doubt. Jessica never showed any signs of disloyalty, never needed to hide her phone or act strangely. The thought of betrayal never even crossed his mind. Not because he was naive, but because everything he knew about Jessica suggested otherwise. If someone had told Michael that, in a matter of days, all this stability he cherished would crumble, he simply wouldn't have believed it. After all, problems can be foreseen, patterns can be analyzed, flaws can be fixed. But what happens when the flaw is where you least expect it? It was an ordinary night. Michael was sitting in his home office, immersed in codes and security protocols. His work demanded a meticulous level of attention, something he had mastered. As an infrastructure technology specialist, he often tested systems to detect flaws and make sure everything ran without any loopholes. It was technical work, but also a logic game, a puzzle he solved with pleasure. That night, he was testing a new telecommunications system that analyzed call transmission quality. The code was running on the screen, and Michael was monitoring data packets, tweaking small variables to optimize signal reception. Nothing out of the ordinary, nothing beyond his usual routine. Then an unexpected audio snippet popped up. A voice. Familiar. Michael's heart skipped a beat, almost imperceptibly. He frowned, thinking it was odd. His software wasn't supposed to pick up real conversations, only analyze frequencies. But for some reason, there it was. And it was Jessica. He hesitated. He wasn't supposed to be listening to that. Maybe it was just a system glitch, some interference, something random. But before he could turn it off, something in her tone made him stop. Yes, Friday, at the Blue Haven Motel. I can't wait to see you. Michael froze. It was as if the entire world had gone silent. Every fiber of his being refused to process what he had just heard. His gaze stayed fixed on the screen, but his mind disconnected from everything. The words echoed in his head, repeating like a system error he couldn't fix. Jessica? The Jessica? The one who laughed at his jokes, who curled up next to him on the couch, who held his hand on tough days. No, it couldn't be. There had to be a logical explanation. Maybe he had heard it wrong. Maybe it was another Jessica. Or maybe it was a conversation taken out of context. But he knew he was clinging to an illusion. Because that was her voice. And the tone. The tone was that of someone eagerly waiting for someone who wasn't him. Michael replayed the recording. Again. And again. Each time he listened, something inside him broke a little more. His chest felt heavy, as if a ton of concrete was pressing down on it. His fingers were stiff on the keyboard. Part of him wanted to run to Jessica at that very moment and ask. He wanted to see her reaction, demand an explanation. But another part, a rational and eerily cold part, told him to wait. To watch. He had always been a man of logic. Before drawing conclusions, he needed absolute certainty. A flaw in the analysis could compromise the entire system. But, what if the system was his own marriage? Michael closed the laptop, turning off the screen as if he could erase what he had just heard. But Jessica's words were still stuck inside him, reverberating like an incessant echo. He didn't sleep that night. He lay beside her, listening to her calm breathing, trying to understand how it was possible that the woman sleeping next to him, so familiar and present, was the same one who, just hours ago, had been planning to be with another man. When Jessica woke up that morning, she stretched like she always did, smiled at Michael, and asked if he wanted coffee. Like nothing had changed. Like nothing was going on. He watched her every move with an analytical gaze, looking for any trace of hesitation, any sign of guilt. But there was nothing. Jessica was the same woman as always, caring, attentive, flawlessly normal. That scared him more than anything. Throughout the day, Michael worked in his home office, but he couldn't focus. He accessed their shared bank account, analyzed Jessica's recent expenses. No suspicious charges, no extravagant purchases. Then he checked the location history on her phone, but nothing was out of the ordinary. She wasn't careless. That's when Michael realized something that made him shudder. Jessica didn't hide anything because she didn't need to. She was so comfortable in her lie that she didn't bother to cover it up. The realization gave him a knot in his stomach. In the following days, he followed his routine with surgical precision, not showing any change. If before, his life was a perfect balance between logic and emotion, now he clung only to logic. Every interaction with Jessica became a silent test. He hugged her and checked if she responded the same way. She did. He kissed her and watched for any hesitation. There was none. He started conversations about her day, waiting for a pause, a glance away. But she spoke normally, with the same details as always. What made him sick was that everything seemed the same. But it wasn't. Michael began to watch her like never before. He noticed small things, details that had gone unnoticed before. Her phone, for example. Jessica always left it on the table, but now he realized that, at certain times, she picked it up for no apparent reason. A mechanical gesture. A precaution? The day of the motel meetup was getting closer. Michael knew she would go. He knew that the next morning, she would have coffee with him as if nothing had happened. Their life would go on just as before. Except now he knew the truth. But how to confront her? He could simply throw the recording in front of her, watch the shock spread across her face, listen to her excuses and her desperate attempts to downplay everything. But that would be too predictable. And Michael hated predictability when it came to a critical error. He needed something that would break Jessica's comfortable indifference. Something that would make her feel the real weight of her choice before she even realized she'd been caught. And that was when the idea came to him. Simple. Silent. Devastating. The day arrived. Michael spent the morning acting exactly the same as always. He had coffee with Jessica, talked about a software update he was implementing at work, and even joked about a silly mistake an intern had made. Jessica laughed and gave him a quick peck before leaving to take care of a few things out. He just watched. Jessica was so comfortable in her lie that she didn't even try to come up with an elaborate excuse. She didn't say she was meeting a friend, didn't mention a made-up appointment. She just left. As if nothing was different, as if that day didn't carry a hidden weight. Michael waited 5 minutes. He grabbed his car keys and left right after her. He didn't have to follow her for long. He already knew exactly where she'd be. Jessica parked her car near the entrance of the Blue Haven Motel. A discreet place with an old sign flashing intermittently, offering privacy and comfort for those who sought well-kept secrets. She got out of the car with a calmness that gave Michael a lump in his throat. There was no hesitation in her steps. She walked with the ease of someone who had been doing this for a while. He watched as Jessica went into the reception and spoke briefly with the clerk. Seconds later, she got a key and walked down the hallway, disappearing into room 304. Michael didn't feel anger. At least not in the explosive sense of the word. What he felt was something worse, a cold, absolute emptiness. It was as if the love he'd always believed in had, at that moment, turned into nothing. But he wasn't there to cry. He took out his phone and did exactly what he had planned. A few yards away, a small local pizzeria made quick deliveries. He called and ordered a medium pepperoni pizza, Jessica's favorite. But the real gift wasn't the pizza, it was the message Michael instructed the delivery guy to attach to the box. 20 minutes later, from across the street, he saw the pizzeria's bike pull up at the motel entrance. The delivery guy got off and walked into reception. Michael held his breath. The clerk made an internal call. Seconds later, a door opened down the hall and Jessica appeared. Her hair was slightly messy, her chin tinged with a faint reddish color, as if she'd been kissed not long ago. She spoke briefly with the delivery guy, paid for the pizza, and took the box with a slight smile. But then, she saw the note stuck to the lid. Her body froze. Her fingers trembled as she pulled off the piece of paper and read the words. Jessica, every choice has a weight. What you're doing right now weighs more than you realize. Just like this pizza, which you might enjoy now, but in the end, will only leave a bitter taste in your mouth. Just like our marriage. Michael felt a shiver run down his spine as he saw the subtle change on her face. The smile vanished. Her brows furrowed in confusion and then in panic. She looked around. Her eyes scanned the parking lot, the sign, the surrounding cars. She knew. She knew she'd been caught. She knew someone was watching. Jessica took a step back, clutching the pizza box to her chest as if it were a useless shield against the reality that had just come crashing down on her. Michael, still in the car, watched everything. He didn't move, didn't honk, didn't get out of the vehicle. He just watched as his wife hurried back into the room, shutting the door behind her. He didn't need to see her leave. He didn't need to hear her excuses. She was already defeated. Michael drove back home. The silence inside the car contrasted with the chaos in his mind. The phone kept vibrating on the passenger seat. He glanced at the screen. Jessica. Of course it was her. He ignored the call. Then another. And another. Every time her name popped up, a bitter taste formed in his mouth. He knew exactly what Jessica would say if he answered. She'd try to turn things around, minimize what she did, maybe even cry and beg for forgiveness. But there was no room left for apologies. Once he got home, he parked the car calmly and walked in. He looked around, taking a deep breath. The place that used to be a home now felt like an empty structure. Without wasting any time, he grabbed 4 large suitcases and started packing all of Jessica's clothes, shoes, and belongings. Every piece of clothing he folded was a reminder. The blouse she wore on their wedding anniversary. The red dress that always caught his eye. But now, it was all just worthless pieces of fabric. He didn't want any of her things there anymore. In a few minutes, all of Jessica's things were out of the closets. He carried the suitcases to the garage and lined them up by the door. He grabbed a piece of paper, wrote a single sentence, and placed it on the luggage. Please take your luggage and go. I'll be in touch so we can sign the divorce papers. Without looking back, he went back inside and locked the door. It didn't take long. Jessica arrived almost immediately after he put the suitcases in the garage. Michael watched through the window as she parked and got out of the car in a hurry. She looked at the suitcases with a shocked expression, grabbed her keys, and tried to open the front door. But Michael was already there. He opened the door before she could turn the handle. He stood in the doorway, his eyes cold, expressionless. Jessica hesitated for a moment, maybe hoping to see some hesitation in him, an invitation to explain. "Michael, please, let me talk," he raised his hand, cutting her off. "There's nothing to talk about. Take your things and go." Jessica opened her mouth to insist, but Michael leaned forward slightly, his voice low and sharp. "If you try to come in, I'll make a scene. All of our neighbors will know what you did. Do you really want to go through that?" She froze. She looked around, as if only now noticing the lights on in the neighboring houses, the curtains shifting discreetly. Curious people. Jessica took a deep breath, closed her eyes for a moment, and stepped back. There was nothing else to do. She grabbed her suitcases, put them in the trunk of her car, and left without a word. Michael stood in the doorway, watching as she disappeared down the street. He felt no relief. No satisfaction. Just a deep emptiness, like something inside him had been forcibly torn away. Jessica drove to her mother's house, who lived a few blocks away. That would be her new reality. No home, no marriage, none of the certainties she thought she had. Michael closed the door and, for the first time that night, felt the real weight of it all. The next morning, the first thing he did was call a lawyer. He explained everything calmly, without emotion. The lawyer was direct. Since the house belonged to Michael's parents, Jessica had no right to it. The only thing she'd walk away from that marriage with was the clothes Michael had packed for her and the money in her bank account. Nothing else. The process started quickly. With no other options, Jessica signed the divorce papers without contesting them. Maybe she still hoped Michael would change his mind, but he didn't give her the chance. But even after the divorce was finalized, Jessica's shadow didn't go away. The following months were hell for Michael. Not because he regretted it, but because Jessica tried in every possible way to come back. She sent messages late at night. Called from different numbers. Tried to contact him through mutual friends, making up excuses so he would agree to talk. At first, they were subtle attempts. Messages like, "I miss you. Can we talk?" Later, when she saw he wasn't answering, the emotional declarations came, "I made a terrible mistake, the worst in my life. Please, give me a chance." And when that didn't work, anger set in. "You never loved me, did you? That's why it was so easy to throw me away." But Michael didn't give in. He knew there was nothing to salvage. He knew that if he took Jessica back, he'd be agreeing to live with a scar that would never fully heal. And so, day after day, he rebuilt himself. Not in the romantic, inspiring way movies show. There was never a moment when everything clicked, when the pain disappeared all at once. It was slow. It was bitter. But it was necessary. Because in the end, Michael learned the biggest lesson of his life: sometimes losing someone who betrayed you isn't a loss. It's a release. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.